Heavenly Father, we come to you in this hour, asking for your guidance and protection to our virtual gathering today. We thank you for the gift of life, the gift of family, the gift of work, and the gift of friendship. We thank you for this great opportunity to bring us together in this session as brothers and sisters. Bless the committee, the facilitator, and the attendees of this gathering. May we continue to value and appreciate the true essence and meaning of life with the help of your grace. And as we go along to our discussion today, we humbly pray that you would deepen our understanding. Lord, enlighten us and give us wisdom every day. Forgive us for our shortcomings and remind us to always be mindful of the things we do in life. We offer our life and our decisions to you, O Lord. May this gathering today create a memorable experience and a fruitful outcome. We ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, our Redeemer and our Savior. Amen.
Okay, so this is Sociology of Information. Now, first, let's look into what is then the study of information. And I'm going to show you here that it is really a field of study, but it is simply looking into the physical nature of information and its properties, but it goes beyond it. And that's where I highlighted the notion that the study of information looks into the transformative effects of information in human character, social interactions, and economic activities, as well as relationships with others. And this is a very interesting topic at this time of the campaign period, in this session, in this year of election for national and local officials, particularly with the use of social media and other means of communication. So generally, the study of information should be taken as a science. But should we call it sociology of information? Now, I examined some published articles or literature about this. I have this notion, despite that the title of this article is The Sociology of Information. It says there exists, however, no sociology of information. So I was so excited in reading this one, and well, finally I was able to discover that the focus should not really, it may not be a field of study right now, but it is the application of different sociological lenses or theories. But take note that when we talk about sociology, it focuses on human social behavior. It looks into how society influences social behavior through the process of social interactions. And take note that social interactions now may not be always physical, but also virtual. And then we are also members of different social networks. And indeed, it's impossible that we not be able to share ideas, share some actions, which ultimately may be influencing others, as we are also being influenced by people whom we are interacting with. Therefore, in this instance, we are using information. We are using this means of sharing ideas, sharing of philosophies in life, and therefore it could be that we could pursue looking into how information by itself had a very strong impact on the way we live. So we are going to sociologize information by understanding information through the use of some sociological theories. And then we're going to examine social actors, their goals, the structures, how communications are being transmitted, and then the results of the transmissions of this information, and many more. So what are the assumptions of human behavior? What are some of the key points of the different sociological theories when they look into the behavior of people? Now, there are 4 labels, but actually they could be put into 2 because they are related. For example, when we talk about being predictable, the it is related to being passive. And if you're going to be, if the notion is that humans are creative, it is related to being active. And therefore, also when we say if it is predictable, the opposite of that is creative, and the opposite of passive, it is active. But what are the descriptions of this? The assumptions that human behavior are predictable means that it could be determined. You could foresee the result given certain input, given certain ideas uh, introduced to a person, then most likely this would be the consequence. So it's predictable. Why it is predictable? Because they are passive. So that's why it's really connected to that assumption that human behavior is passive, because they are being controlled by existing norms, by the pressure in society. So people then would just follow because the authorities or people whom they have strongly respected have said so. No? So therefore, they would just be meek about it and then follow what they would say. Now, the opposite, which is now the number 3, is creative. That people behave according to their own interpretation of the meaning of every interaction. And this refers to the kind of information that they would get. And they analyze this one and then put meanings into this, and that's how they react to this kind of information. That's why we have the number 4 assumption that humans behave according to their personal interest, and therefore their actions are always motivated by that personal desire or whatever pressure from within that determines how they are going to behave. Now, in relation to information, I have these 4 questions which are also connected to these assumptions. And the answers to this would also correspond to what assumption is prevailing. Number 1, did they respond as anticipated or expected given certain information? That is the assumption number 1, predictable. Number 2, did they just accept the information per se because it was from the authority? And the authority here could be legal or traditional. No? It could be from the government, or it could be from the family, or from anyone that they look upon. No? So that's assumption number 2. Number 3, did they give other meanings to the information handed to them? So despite of the given meaning to certain information handed to a particular person, the person would think otherwise and interpret it differently. That is assumption number 3. And number 4, did they accept or reject certain information relative to their own interests? And that one correspond to assumption number 4. So these assumptions of human behavior also influence the way we package informations and the way we strategize in introducing information to individuals. So certainly, there are reasons why people behave this way or that way, and you might be so confused why, despite with all of this information, they keep on certain behavior or certain position. Now, you have to then examine these assumptions of human behavior. Information from a functionalist perspective is always useful. No, information is useful, and that's a Parsonian from Talcott Parsons, sociologist Talcott Parsons. That is, he said that anything that society has a purpose, and therefore, since information is a human creation, it is functional. Why it is like that? Because humans are all are social beings. They are not only physical or biological. Humans have to interact. Humans have to survive. So, in fact, early in our history, early in the civilization, humans already interacted with other related human beings, and they organized themselves into groups for the primary intention of survival. No? So, living alone at a very harsh environment is difficult, and therefore they have to organize themselves, and that requires information. Therefore, access to information is really vital to group survival. Example of this would be the sharing or information about where to secure food and when to protect themselves if there would be calamities or there are some attacks from from rival groups. No, so the way information is transmitted and the quality of information that is being transmitted really has a very important function in any social group at that time. And perhaps you could now imagine how information now may determine our kind of life, the quality of life that we're going to have after the election. Now, information are conveyed through cultural tools. So there are many ways of doing that. Well, uh, animals have their own way also of conveying information. They have also their own way of sharing information to tell other members of the group that there's certain food or there's a danger, and therefore they could avoid it. We too have those signs and symbols, and these are understood by members of a group, of the same group, and therefore information enhance group identity. Right now, it's very interesting to look into that we are sharing information, and every time we share information, there is always a distinction. And the distinction could be in terms of colors, the distinction could be in terms of words. I'll be using those examples later on. But information could also be dysfunctional. And this is the point raised by Robert K. Merton. So I call this argument as Mertonian. So information is dysfunctional. The point that Robert K. Merton was saying is that not everything that society has served a good purpose. Everything we have has always the other side. If information is functional, it is also dysfunctional. So anything you have, no, food is functional, but it could also be dysfunctional. And you notice that, no, medicine is functional, it could also be dysfunctional. So very similar with information. Now, I think the first two speakers talked already about this concept, but I just want to repeat this one. So these are the specific examples or nature when information could be dysfunctional: misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. So all those prefix, no? Mis, this, mal. I highlighted those because those are all negative. And the descriptions here, first with misinformation, it is false. This is false, but not created with the intention of causing harm. That's the description. Example of this is posting an article containing now out of date information, but having not realized that it is outdated. And we have several of those on Facebook. The other one, which is more serious, disinformation. It is also false, but then deliberately created to harm a person, any social group or party or organization or a country. And we see that right now in our social media. It is posting false statistics, for example, by rival person or group with an intent to discredit the other. So there is really an intention to harm. Malinformation, on the other hand, is an information that is true, but it is used to inflict harm on a person. So still the intention is to harm a person. Example of this, which I got from uh, 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 Kujawski, 2019, the description on using a picture of a dead child, a refugee, then the intention is to ignite hatred towards another. Actually, that picture is not a picture of that situation being demonstrated. It was taken from somewhere. And again, you have experienced those. You have seen a lot of those pictures taken from somewhere and then attached to a news item or a post without citing the real context of that picture. The purpose to excite, to ignite hatred towards another group. Therefore, information is not always useful. Information destroys also. In this point of Robert K. Merton. Therefore, when we look into information, we should not be looking at it as simply an object. It's not simply a thing. It's not simply a commodity. It is having life which are created and designed by people to serve their purpose. And we could examine that here in terms of the elements of information. Any information have always a message. And it is the description here of a message that any transmitted ideas for a purpose. Ideas transmitted for a purpose, and our example would be to name call a rival candidate in order to project bad image. Here, it could be misinformation, it could be disinformation. The other element is medium. There is always the means to deliver the information. It could be social and technological. No, it could be through personal contact when you're talking to each other, when you are attending a group meeting. Now then the transmission could be social, or it could be through social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, IG, and so on. No, behind this message and the use of medium are people, and these people are either directly or indirectly involved. But if the intention is always to harm, then it could be individuals who are competing or are in conflict with each other. And our example would be political candidates, because they are very, very visible now. And not only the political candidates, but also followers, to the extent that they also appear like fanatics already. and then the general publics. When you say publics, these are people who are divided by interests. And therefore, if we have these people, there are also those supporting them, certain groups. No? So these are supporting and negating entities. So again, there are two groups mentioned here. In our example, we political parties, and then you have campaign funders. They have also interest to pursue, either for personal interest or for group interest. And then we have the context, the setting, the situation, and the resources available for people to convey information or to share information. Our example, again, the election time we have now, we're having multiple political parties, but then the resources may be limited, or the resources may be so abundant that they could afford to spend. In fact, later on, we may be able to see, or perhaps you had learned in last presentation, that sharing of information for a certain purpose through social media happened immediately or before 2016. So the resources must be really that huge, to be able to project, revise, create a certain image, and this is through the manipulation of information. So information is not simply an object. Information has uh, has a context, has people behind it, has a means of doing it, and so on. So information, therefore, forges social interaction. And this is from the perspective of symbolic interactionism. And this is a good example of that, no? When we talk about how social means could transmit uh, false information. But chismis, as we call it, is more of a localized disinformation. I think we always associate chismis with something negative. So I wrote in here that although not unique to Filipinos, culturally we are fond of spreading false or unverified information. And the intention is to malign or make fun, to degrade a person. Uh, it is done in the neighborhood, and also it's also labeled as a favorite pastime of several people who have nothing to do. That's why now we have the term maritis, no? To describe this kind of people. If you are in a close neighborhood, or if you are in a rural community, commonly you could find this kind of people disseminating or sharing ideas in the kapihan, tindahan, kilid sa dalan, hagdanan sa balay, and many other places where usually they would converge. And it appears that it is easy, that it easily spread, but it is by mouth, no? So it's spread by physically transmitting it in the neighborhood. It is different with the coming and the popularity of social media. And so it is social media that is now globalizing information. So right now, as I'm talking, uh, the information I am sharing, or anything that I share here, could easily be transmitted through IT or information technology. You don't have to wait for a certain time that what I was saying could be known to other people. So with the sophistication of information technology and the popularity of social media, this information now by trolls, I'm citing this in particular, which I'm going to talk later on also, is revolutionized and globalized. Actually, this the topic controls was discussed previously by the other speakers. Manila Times writer Noemi Lardizabal Dado had lamented that reporting false information on social media platforms and its removal takes time. So there's that danger once false information goes out already electronically, because by the time the fake news is pulled out, the lies have spread far and wide. It is imperative, therefore, for us to be the truth tellers, and therefore to, excuse me, and be able to debunk all those false messages being conveyed. The next point that I would like to share are the terms, so that it could connect to the notion of those to the notion of spreading of false information. Let's look into how this is happening, how the process uh, proceed. So we have the terms here that we're going to connect: data, data processing, information, and knowledge. So the information that we are sharing actually is already processed. It 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 was generated from somewhere, no? It and we call this one as data. And the data here is what we call any factual information, and we use that as evidence. In fact, in research, data is a very precious material, because when we write reports, we always have to show evidence, and this could be in the form of statistics, or it could be recorded raw descriptions of things, events, activities, and transactions. So these are in the raw form. Uh, after this, after these are being collected, then these are being processed, and these are translated into usable information. So data processing is what produce the information which eventually are being interpreted, and the intention was to produce meanings of this. The data by itself may have, therefore, different meanings to different people looking at it. It's because of the different perspectives, and we have to go back to the assumptions of human behavior to explain why we don't see the data similarly, although we see it as objectively real, but it would only be subjectively meaningful. Out of data processing now comes the information. It's an organized or processed data about someone or something that we obtain from various sources, like social and mass media, documents, or key persons that we interviewed. Ultimately, this set of information becomes knowledge. And this is where our awareness and understanding about the subject has been established. And this is from the information that we acquired, and also from education and experience. And it's something within us. Knowledge, therefore, is something that we have already consolidated within us. That my position here is that if you have knowledge of something already, it's so difficult to change it by counter information. So, because that information is not only derived from other sources, but also from your personal experience and observation. I will show a model to illustrate that later. So how is information being transmitted? Again, in the previous presentation, these were also mentioned, but I'm adding here, I think, some key points that are really very important in the sociology of information. First is face-to-face communication, and that is through our casual conversations, and that includes like the chismes that I mentioned earlier. And then it could be through formal meetings and conference. We learn many things from this social interaction. So take note, it's face-to-face. The other one is through our immediate personal observation, and uh, it is uh, based on how we judge certain ideas or opinions. And opinions, take note, are personal view or judgment of other people, and we are often influenced by those opinions or the impressions, impressions of other people, and we're also being affected by those impressions. That often we have difficulty distinguishing what is an opinion and what is a fact. So it is very sad that opinions, when assumed to be facts, could spread and then influence other people's views. Then we have the use of documents or visual materials like the newspapers, the reports. Then this what we have now, being mediated by information technology, social media, mass digital and broadcast media. These are all the means of transmitting information. And you could see how information moves or are transmitted that fast this time compared many years ago. So compared at the time I mentioned, about early human beings when they first settled here on Earth, and then we have civilization. So information is fast moving now, and therefore, as information move fast, it also influence behavior of people, and everything that follows. The technology had mediated the process. In fact, despite of the pandemic, we're still able to interact virtually and transmit information. Now, imagine if you didn't have this kind of technology. This was not invented. I think interactions of people would stop because we are restricted by regulations of interacting with other people due to the fear of viral transmission. Now, this is what I said earlier. Uh, how knowledge is created from the information that we get. So then this is what I said about the connections of all these things. So we have data, raw data. Then we have data processing. The manner the data are being consumed, the manner the data is being interpreted, and they turn become information, and that adds to our knowledge. Take note, therefore, or take note, however, that every information is not necessarily knowledge, but all knowledge is information. The point I'm saying here is that there's certain information that you take, but you take it and its face value without examining it, and we mistakenly assume it to be true, but it's not. And therefore, it is saying here that knowledge is a basic requirement in critical thinking. Critical thinking, therefore, is a requirement for us to really make a right decision based on certain information given to us. So take note, we started with the whole notion that information could be mis, this, or mal information. Okay, so that's it. Data, raw information, data processing, the way we consume, interpret that data, which we use as information, and add that to our bodies of knowledge. Wrong information would lead to wrong knowledge, but take note that information is not necessarily knowledge, but all knowledge is information tested by time. So what's the role here of trolls? But take note, trolling have benefits also. So some of us may say, oh, trolling is negative. Trolling is supposed to be dysfunctional. But take note, Parson said that anything that exists has a purpose. But then Merton would also say, yeah, it has a purpose, but the purpose may have a bad consequence to others. So it is also dysfunctional. But let's look into the benefits of trolling. As described, troll is anyone who maligned or canceled, bash, or destroy certain personality on social media. And there are two types of trolls, unpaid trolls and the paid trolls. So what are the benefits? Psychological and economic. And in fact, some perhaps have read the report of Washington Post that they are making money. And the study also of, I think, one a Filipino who got another research project because of his study of trolls. No, that there is somebody is recruiting, somebody is maintaining a troll farm. Now, unpaid trolls are basically driven by emotional or psychological benefits, and they're satisfied for what they're doing in terms of the number of likes or shares they could see in any platform. So why do you always post something? Because many likes, I got many likes and I got many shares in my platform. I'm not exactly familiar how that could be turned into money also, but here I'm just focusing more on the emotional or psychological benefits. Perhaps you could think about yourself also on this matter. How about the paid trolls? They're basically driven by money and recruited and maintained by a troll farm. And based on what I have read, they are following certain script or talking points. And I had been exposed to this. I always receive certain narratives that follow the same points. So that's trolling. And the trolls, therefore, are responsible for misinformation. No, I think more of disinformation. Or it could be malinformation also. So when we focus on disinformation, let's focus on disinformation, because this is one thing that we are trying to correct. So here, when Dr. Dave invited me to speak about this issue on disinformation, I said, I think I could talk more about the sociology and I should talk last, so I could synthesize many things. Sociologically, disinformation has always two or more individuals or groups being involved. One is directly or indirectly involved. No, one is directly, the other one is indirectly involved because perhaps they have someone and they call it attack dogs, no? Or they call it the warriors. But then one is maligned, and the other one is benefited. So there are always two or more people involved, and they are competing for something, a reward, uh, which is designed, however, for only one person to enjoy. And that's this information is really intentional, and that is aimed to derail the other, and that was mentioned earlier. Another distinction is that one has more money and mechanism to control access of technology to disseminate ideas and therefore manipulate and deceive an uncritical public. That's a danger. If you have uncritical public who just accept anything and then share this also, and they become therefore breeders of disinformation. So from the paid trolls, then we are producing those innocent people who believe about the information and they share this one. So that's why they become also breeders of disinformation. And that is shown in this post, no, that election disinformation efforts target to damage Robredo's image and then boss Marcos Jr. So this 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 news item or this article support the point I'm raising here, that when you talk about disinformation, there are always two or more individuals involved. And these are other types of disinformation. And I got this term infodemic from the previous presentation. Infodemic during pandemic, because this happened at a time that we are personally involved or engaged in discussion with people. So the social media has plenty of this. And I selected some of those that are really interesting. Like, for example, this one, the disinformation on red tagging. Two items, no? Two sources. The first one, Juma admits advising Lini. Then the other post is, I have not been advising Lini. So that's tagging. Then we have here from Presidential Isco, no? And he was quoted by this post. And I was saying that this is what is nice also of having electronic file, because you can just search what are in your file. And so I think the one who posted this was able to find this, that actually he was the first who said that I don't want to run as president. Then later on, she accused President Lenny that she cannot be trusted. So that's projection. That's then we have this one when the overseas election started, a day after. So we have the post, and it says that in Hong Kong, Marcos leads, but then it was false, and it is based on but based on the numbers, it's not true. But the intention really is mind setting. So there's an intention for that. Then the other one, the latest I got, which is plenty, this kind of style, but very few words, but very attractive to people who like to have this. Bigas 20 pesos per kilo, mantika 12 pesos per bottle perhaps, and then thanks BBM. It's more of deception because there are no details provided how this could be achieved. But then this is very attractive to people, and you could see a lot of this. Now, the whole point I'm saying here is that this is one problem now we have, the infodemic, which are sources of misinformation and disinformation and malinformation. Another is this Facebook post used as FB comment. What I'm saying is that I always receive this. BBM kami, wala iyang mga fake records lang mga yan. 30 years ng Liberal Party, walang nagawa. Bulto at puro fake news. Open your to reality. I describe it as a critical believer because in the first place, 30 years, if you would see here, that's 1986, Cory Aquino, then 2016, Rodrigo Duterte. And by the way, this other post is debunking that kind of thought, no? And this also very satirically drawn to show oh, they're not using uh, their minds, that they include Fidel Ramos, Estrada, and Gloria Macapagal in their criticism against the Liberal Party. So 2016 to 1986 indeed is 30 years, but it is not all Liberal Party. Another analysis for this, that that kind of narrative has been shared many times, despite of being uh, corrected already. That continues to be shared, and many are sharing that one. See how effective this kind of thing, but I suspect this person must be a troll also. This one shows an illustration of both uh, Marcos and Robredo's uh, posts, no, that are false. In the case of Robredo, which was claimed by her follower that he served in the three branches, and it is considered as false because being with the public attorney's office is not a it's not within the judiciary. It's not part of it. No? So therefore, she did not serve in the two branches. In this case of Marcos, the claim about the claim that Ilocano was a pambansang wika, then is going to bring it back. It's also false because never that pamansang wika was Ilocano. So these are promises. This is an example of a promise and a claim. These are all false, and we have to be careful about this. Now we have to be careful about this, and how should we do that? Will be discussed later on. But let me also show here why TikTok videos stick, and able to invent new truths. No? So I read this from somewhere, and also read articles about this, and I have here a support, no, on the claim of Roa and others who wrote this article, no, about TikTok. But let me cite why TikTok videos stick. It's very brief, direct, and it's really framed for a purpose with catchy tunes, and then very attractive. It also uses popular language, and it could be viewed anytime and anywhere. It's easily accepted when it reinforces existing beliefs or emotions, and therefore it serves our biases and prejudices. Also, when we refuse to verify or read more other sources. No, I usually, when I viewed that TikTok and then there are points being raised, I usually go to documents and examine it. And therefore, anything, no, not only TikTok videos, but any social media sources would have an effect on us because we are complacent as viewers. We never question. We do not seek for what is the truth if ever there's something wrong with the TikTok, because TikTok is also used by some politicians who are honest, no? Politicians who are true on what they're conveying. So what should we do to surface truth? I mentioned that already. The first one, you go to first-hand document as the best source of information, especially at this time that we have information overload, and this is useful to fight misinformation and disinformation. And we don't have to put down those people who are conveying it. We don't have to call them bobo. We don't have to call them uncritical. I mean straight, no, because that would hurt them, and therefore they would defend them more. I mean, it's It's an attack also to their personality or ego. So simply, it's just to let them know about the data, about the information. Uh, we have now the photocopying technology, and these are useful also. However, there are questions about the authenticity of a document. So always we have to compare photocopy with the original document or corroborate this with other sources. And these are also seen on social media and also seen in many interactions now or transactions, especially with the pandemic. As I've mentioned earlier, TikTok and YouTube may be reliable, but generally they're considered as not reliable. But I use them only after I corroborate that the information they give from other sources. And I mentioned earlier, triangulation of sources is very important to see the truth behind the information. So document, key persons, research articles, and so on. So that's how we're going to surface the truth. Now, talking about respect opinion uh, is only good, no? If it is based on facts. That's why I said we have to distinguish. We have to distinguish what's an opinion and what is factual. Here, as my friend, sociologist Dr. Jail Cornelio explains that I respect your opinion if I believe your position is for the common good. But when one's opinion uh, is otherwise, no, why should we should be critical, no, about those opinions? Because opinions should be anchored in what is the truth. But who tells the truth? That's a question actually. Who tells the truth? Because everyone who says something always say that I'm what I have is the truth. No, the, the point, however, here is that the majority does not always carry the truth. So we look for, again, we look for documentary evidences that are authentic, and testimonials of informed persons or authorities. Is always a problem because everyone would claim, I am a conveyor of truth. I have the truth, and that's always a question. Now, the same thing also is shared by Ana Cristina Tuason about opinions. Opinions aren't exempt from scrutiny or fact checking. So respect opinion or respect my opinion is not acceptable, especially if it is not based on facts. But even if it's based on facts, it is still subject to scrutiny because it's going to affect other people. Okay, so that's the point here. Then we have this way of checking also, which was, I think, mentioned several times. So if information technology is responsible for disseminating or becoming a tool for disseminating false information, it has also its own dose, no, to remedy this problem. So we have here uh, uh, way of checking how true the information is. However, this is only for online, no, information. So examples of what to fact check. Here, often this is the question being asked, maninakaw ba talaga ang mga Marcos? Bakit hindi sila nakakulong? And these are the responses provided. But I won't accept these responses. No, the question is from the other party. Those responses are trying to, to give the explanations and to provide basis. But still, this is not acceptable to many. But I think what is important really is the point I raised earlier. We have to distinguish opinions from facts. And if there are certain facts that are questionable, we really have to look for the source of those to make a wise decision, to make a wise position also. That's why we have this, no? And I like this one. Know your presidential candidates. I also share this one on my Facebook page. But I'm not saying that you vote for this candidate or not. It's up to the viewer. But again, this is a good guide because it simplifies how we're going to select our candidate, our whom we're going to vote on May 9th. But then you have to always look for the original source of those claims. We cannot just simply say immediately that this is fake. That's a problem. When we immediately say it's fake, then there's no opportunity that the documents or the posts that we are looking into could be verified and could be checked if it indeed is telling the truth or not. So this is the model how to do it. No? So we have the input. The input here, I mean the data. The data is the input. So it could be oral. So right now I'm talking to you. I'm giving some ideas. I'm giving some opinions. Perhaps you could consider that one also as an expert opinion. Then we have visual, so we have materials. Then we have written down. There's our documents. No? So that's why information comes as signs, come as objects. But these are nothing if these are not being processed to make us informed. And that is through the way we give meanings, and that is the process of interpretation. So that's within us, but what's then the final result of this? You know, from the data, from the information, it should be knowledge. The output should be knowledge, knowing new or verified something already known. There are so many things we know already, but then we have to finally check on those so that at the end, when we act on those, we really make a good action. So the decision have to be translated into action. So if you're going to put this in the context of election, action is the vote. The informations are those things that were, that were presented to us. Our interpretation is how we look into the candidates and how these have changed our ideas now or have reinforced our ideas that I'll vote for this candidate. And therefore, by May 9, we vote this candidate, both national and local candidates. So my concluding statements would be this. Information inputs. The varied the information sources, the higher would be the uncertainty of the messages, but the greater the freedom of choices. That's what's good now. We have the freedom of choice. Unfortunately, there are so many messages coming in, and that makes it difficult. And that's why there is greater uncertainty. We're not so sure which is a misinformation, which is disinformation or malinformation. Information process. The more ways are pursued to ensuring truth or facts or the quality of information, the greater the chances of reducing the uncertainty of decisions. And the point here is that we don't have to be complacent. We don't have to accept everything that are presented to us. We have to pursue further seeking what is true, what are the facts behind this, so that we could reduce the uncertainty of our decisions, whom we are going to vote. Therefore, that's the information outputs now. Therefore, the more knowledgeable the person is, the higher the certainty of decisions, thus increasing the benefits of action. I hope that summarizes everything I had presented to you, that our action should always be grounded on our knowledge coming from our serious interpretation of any information coming to us, because knowledge or information contributes to knowledge that would give us certainty in making decisions, and therefore we would benefit more from the actions we're going to make. So these are my references, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Oracion. And it was a very interesting topic, especially it is sort of summarizing the previous sessions on our advocacy to fight misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. So if you have questions, please type them on to everyone. You can send it to everyone, or you can send it privately to me or to Steve, our staff here. And I assume that everyone will be polite in asking their questions. If you like to switch on your microphone, please do so also. Okay. That if you have some clarification, perhaps reaction on the different interpretations that our speaker was discussing a while ago. Okay. I have some notes here. Dr. Rashon is actually trying to rejoin them from the questions raised during the first, the second, and the third, because the first session last April to discuss about media, trying to explain to us media, the concept of media, the principle of media. And one that I got from that talk that says media is always biased. And as you mentioned, there is always a quote, respect my opinion, or this media has nothing to report than negativity, and so on and so forth. How this misconception perhaps of how we look at media affects data processing, considering that media are expected to be the source of our information.
Yeah, that's a good point. No, it's actually talking about sociology of information technology. That technology again is not isolated; it is interacting with humans. Right now, we're not only talking about the print and the broadcast, and we have now social media, which uses information technology. We cannot avoid it. We always there's always what we call association, because you could see the bias of certain media. In fact, one of the examples I have shown about tagging, that was that was coming from a media that is owned by the family of one of the candidates. Or you could see also another TV network that is owned by uh, by a friend or an advisor of the other party. So as a viewer, as an audience, we also become selective, and as a that therefore I agree it's going to affect data processing. No, it's unfortunate because, and I would consider it's unfortunate because you have no opportunity to listen the other side. Although some broadcast or print media would say balanced programming, I think it's really impossible to attain a perfect balance. There's always that inkling, and therefore they were tagged. No, they were tagged. So in the Mageti, it's also like that in our radio stations,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
therefore I was saying earlier, if certain information reinforces our bias and prejudices, we focus on this source of information. But if you are a critical one who would like to see both sides, and so you could decide uh, in a very informed way, then you also read or watch or listen to other views and make a position. And I think that would make a good decision, and you stand for it, compared to
Yeah.
when you only base from one source. Then when somebody would
Yeah.
come, you go to the other side. So it's really, knowledge. Therefore, is very important. Not simply information.
Yeah, because when you were explaining that, I recalled to a a photo taken from the newly inaugurated bridge with
Mm.
the and many comments like uh why is it that they posted that kind of photos where we are celebrating this kind of success, but at the same time uh it's like a negative and a misinforming people that after all the success,
Mm.
the project, there is the other side of the community. So
I saw
it
that.
might, yeah. Because it might, based on your framework, um because we as an ordinary citizen like me, we always read to media, we always read to periodicals, and
Mm.
if people were saying that these media are biased, then who are not biased then?
Yeah. Uh, may I remark on that? I read also comments from journalists, no, practitioners really, and one of the comment made was that we are not PR people. So dili sila public relations that they would
Mm,
convey only the good sides. Uh, for me, as a sociologist, anthropologist in one, I find that picture interesting. But I could see the purpose.
yeah,
It's a critic actually. It's a critic of the development. You develop this one for whom? But then look at the people below. See, so it's just a message. That's what I said
correct.
earlier. That any information has a message, has a purpose, and therefore, as a critical viewer, do not immediately accept or do not critic. Of course, if you have your interests being affected, you critic that one because you're hurt, di ba? But if you could sense nga, oh, may point siya,
Mm,
sige. Uh, but the timing also is a question. That's why I said the context. So look
yes,
into those,
yes.
those elements of information. The context, it was supposed to be the launching, eh.
Mm, mm.
But then
A
another
celebration of
context, a
success, yeah.
celebration. But another question is, it's not yet finished. Why launch it? That's another
That is
context.
really correct. Yeah. Yeah. There are really many lenses of critics also, because there are some really who critically made their stand also, and
Mm.
there are also points, but after all, we cannot please everyone. Let me jump to trolling, because you were mentioning about trolls, you were mentioning about paid. Huh? My question really more on the paid, because we know for the fact that as you also mentioned that right, everything has a purpose, and trolls are there, and they are there for living. Being a sociologist, because ako personally, I can't really imagine people make a living to destroy a certain group of people or a certain group of person. um why this kind of things exist?
Okay. It's nice, no? It's a good study, perhaps. Let's go to the psychology of trolls. Go
Yeah.
inside the trolls. I can remember there's a study on that. A troll who confess why they're doing it. But my personal opinion for that, I would say expert opinion, because you have to distinguish opinion from facts. No,
Correct.
my observation more is it's a work. People, they perhaps just think that's a work. Uh, then comes the value of a person. If you know it is something like that, then why should I accept the work? But I need work. I need a job. What is not good is if there are people who part-time themselves as trolls and they're professionals. And that's another thing also. I
Mm.
saw before a recruitment for that, no, mga 2014, 2016, or I think after 2016, and the invitation was the job is simply to sit before a Facebook and just click. I didn't take that seriously. until I realized how troll farms operate. So I think that that's the point. I mean that opinion of mine may be questioned also, but that's how I look at it. You need job, so this will work for me. Never mind
Yeah,
what's going to.
because they are very effective also sometimes, and you were also mentioning that emotion sometimes also make people make the content more viral and more
Mm-mm,
interesting, because there is always emotions in the content that affect so many readers, especially on social media, especially because all of us has biases, all of us have our own biases. And I agree with you that sometimes if there is little knowledge, that is where danger will come in, because we might be sharing not so good and unverified facts about on those issues, because there's a lot doing that, even because the technologies nowadays are so sophisticated. You were mentioning about images, TikTok, and I must agree with you that there are research papers discussing about the benefits of TikTok, and even in education,
mm-mm,
we call it is always associated to micro learning.
mm-mm,
Because it is very short, very
mm-mm,
focused to certain group of learners. But again, evils are always evil. They are trying to make it perhaps for a living that may distract a another group of people or group of community. About looking at your references, triangulation, it is really true. My suggestion really is look at on documents. If possible, don't rely on static images, don't rely on videos. Why? Because the discussion of the third series on deep fake technology is really, really scary, because it's now artificial intelligence. You
mm-mm,
can create a video even if you don't have photography, or you don't have video camera.
mm-mm.
I was also telling this, and I think I shared this with you, Dr. Rashon. There was also a website that in just one click you can create a research article,
Oh yes.
and that was 10 years ago. It's
Mm,
basically text related faking. Now it's in the image and in video. We call that signal processing, and it's difficult to difficult to check whether it is correct or not. And the way to check it, because of its sophistication and because of its seamless way of doing it, our eyes cannot anymore detect if that is fake or not. And it needs technology to counterattack on that kind of fake images or fake videos. That is why I always tell my students that as much as possible, yes, it's nice to maybe use those videos on TikTok, but as a point of your reference to bring you to a more credible sources like research articles published in journals. Because there are really sometimes who use I saw some advocates who utilize TikTok for their micro learning approach type of educating, especially the young adults, because research shows, Dr. Rashon, the span of viewing videos is getting was the shorter and shorter.
20.
There was a study before, it was 15 minutes, and then it
Mm.
goes down to 7 minutes. Now
Oh,
it's 3 minutes. That is why TikTok is really, really
fast,
uh
fast.
well, yeah, and very famous and very useful tool for this kind of generation when they watch videos. And research also is telling that if the shorter the video, viewers will not tend to scroll forward. But if videos are more than 3 minutes, the viewers will tend to fast forward. That is why TikTok is most useful in this kind of generation. So that's it. It's still perhaps boils down to to what your concluding remarks, that awareness or understanding about the subject as information acquired through education and experience within a person. And therefore, the more knowledgeable the person is, the higher the certainty of decisions, thus increasing the benefits of action. uh, Makaingon ko sana all that many ordinary citizens will really validate facts, because Dr. Rashon, in the field of IT, there is a so-called behavioral targeting advertisement. That is why if you have this kind of sentiments on social media, you will keep on receiving this kind of
Yes.
blogs, this kind of feeds, and so on and
Mm.
so forth, because they target your emotions. And that's really, really scary. So you just imagine if you wake up in a day and then all of your feeds on your Facebook is really on the positive or will agree to what you think is right, then obviously the rest of your day will really believe on those issues and news. My suggestion is, if you will see suggested for you, don't immediately, don't immediately be
Click.
part of that kind of group or clip into that, because it's all about money. They advertise. You were mentioning how these people earn from those is basically based from your clicks, based on your views. And if you can see, there are posts naga viral, and if you will see ads, that's the time that they earn. And
Mm.
that's what they are looking at. There are many bloggers that trying to put emotions into their content, because we Filipinos love to react immediately. No, but sometimes we cannot help ourselves react immediately, especially if those are unverifiable facts from the opinion they stated. I hope our participants will share their perhaps their comments, their reactions to the sharing from our speaker this morning. We have participants actually from the Department of Education. I know some uh, from Iloilo. We also have from Bohol, and of course from Silliman University. So I guess we have no more questions. I hope you learned something from the 4 days, or I mean the 4 sessions that we have on a series on misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. I hope and we promise that we will not end our advocacy to fight this kind of issue, this global issue. I could say global issue because misinformation, masinformation, and malinformation is not just simply election, even the current war that we have. I started writing about this, and it's really scary. There's a lot of information even on war. We have our own belief about the two countries, and we feel pity to this country. Then at the end of the day, it's we're just misinformed because of the technology available on the internet, especially on social media, artificial intelligence, deep fake, emotional targeting, behavioral targeting, and all this kind of algorithm also affect, no, as a medium, as discussed by Dr. Rashon. It is nice actually to look at a more focus on the medium of information, especially on information technology, that goes beyond word processing, text, image, picture, that goes beyond codes, programs, symbols, and all those algorithms. Okay? So daghang salamat for attending. Yes, we have a certificate for today, and once again we would like to thanks our speaker this morning for having him. And let me share my screen for some announcement before we will end this discussion, and so that you will also have time to evaluate our session, because it will be locked after our session. If you have time, please attend our other training. This afternoon, we will have our how to create a logo quick and easy by Assistant Professor Janice Antoniette Forster at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Again, this is open to non-Sillimanian. This is on creating a logo quick and easy without having a skill in Photoshop. Before we'll end, if you can switch on your video, please switch on your video for a photo opportunity. 3, 2, 1. So once again, daghang salamat, and the recordings of this will be uploaded in our website. This is Dave Marshall. I am the project leader of Dr. Mariano Lau ICI Laboratory. Daghang salamat sa pagtambong sa atong session this morning. Bye everyone.